The night was heavy with tension as Mirabelle stood before her parents, her small frame trembling under the weight of their condemnation. "You've brought shame upon this family," Lionel's voice roared, his words like daggers piercing her chest. Mirabelle's knees felt weak. I didn't mean to," she stammered, tears streaming down her face. Evelyn folded her arms, her face hardened with disgust. "Didn't mean to? You're 14, Mirabelle. How could you let this happen? Pregnant at this age, disgusting." Mirabelle's hands trembled as she tried to explain, "Mom, I was scared. I didn't know how." Evelyn cut her off sharply. "Don't call me Mom. You've disgraced this family. Pack your things and leave." "Please, Dad," Mirabelle turned to Lionel, her eyes pleading. But Lionel slammed his hand on the table, his face stern. "We don't have a daughter anymore. Get out." Her heart shattered into a million pieces. With nowhere to turn and no one to comfort her, Mirabelle fled into the pouring rain, the whispers of neighbors following her like shadows. Cold, hungry, and drenched, Mirabelle wandered the empty streets. The rain soaked through her thin clothes, chilling her to the bone. Desperation gnawed at her as she sought shelter. She approached an abandoned building, its cracked walls offering a semblance of hope. A gruff man barred her entrance. "Get lost, girl. We don't want trouble here." She backed away, her stomach growling. Finally, she found a bench in the park and curled up, clutching her stomach protectively. The cold night was merciless, but exhaustion claimed her, and she drifted into an uneasy sleep. Later, footsteps and muffled voices roused her. A group of men loomed in the shadows, their intentions clear. Mirabelle's heart raced as she bolted, her feet slipping on the wet ground. She ran until she found a narrow alley, collapsing under a tree. "Why does everyone hate me?" she whispered, her voice cracking as tears mixed with the rain. Fever and despair overtook her, and she lost consciousness. "Child, wake up," a warm voice called gently. Mirabelle blinked through her haze, meeting the kind eyes of an elderly woman. I don't know where to go," Mirabelle murmured weakly, collapsing into her arms. The woman, Martha, carried her to a small bakery that radiated warmth and the comforting smell of fresh bread. "Eat," Martha said, setting a bowl of soup before her. Mirabelle hesitated, her hands shaking. "Why are you helping me?" Martha smiled. "Because everyone deserves kindness, especially when the world turns its back on them." For the first time in days, Mirabelle felt safe. Mirabelle began helping around the bakery, sweeping floors and learning to knead dough under Martha's patient guidance. Despite her gratitude, the small town's cruelty persisted. "That's the girl who got kicked out," sneered Esteban, a local grocer, one morning. Martha glared at him. "If you don't have anything kind to say, Esteban, you can take your business elsewhere." The whispers and judgmental stares weighed heavily on Mirabelle. One evening, a group of men harassed her outside the bakery. "Get inside," Martha shouted, wielding a broom like a weapon. The men scattered, and Martha hugged Mirabelle tightly. "Don't let them win, child." As Mirabelle adjusted to life with Martha, she found herself determined to rise above her circumstances. However, the challenges were unrelenting. She sought work to ease the burden on Martha, only to face rejection after rejection. "We don't hire people like you," one shopkeeper said, his tone dripping with disdain. Humiliated and defeated, Mirabelle returned to the bakery in tears. "I can't do this anymore, Martha." Martha placed a hand on her shoulder. "You're stronger than you think. Remember, you're not just living for yourself anymore. That child inside you needs you to keep going." Those words ignited a spark in Mirabelle's heart. Years later, Mirabelle returned to the town she had once fled. Time had transformed her from a frightened girl into a poised businesswoman. She arrived with her son, Daniel, now a confident 14-year-old. Together, they walked through the town's bustling streets toward her parents' home. Evelyn opened the door, her face pale. "Mirabelle?" "Hello, Mother," Mirabelle said calmly. I thought it was time for you to meet your grandson. Daniel stepped forward, extending his hand. Nice to meet you, Grandma. Lionel appeared, his expression unreadable. Staring at her confused and don't know what to say. Is that you, Mirabelle? He asked. Oh, you have changed. We made a mistake, he stammered. Mirabelle nodded. I've forgiven you, but I came back for closure, not approval. I've built a life for myself and my son, despite everything. Before leaving, she handed Evelyn a package containing a loaf of bread and a note. This bread represents resilience and forgiveness. It's a reminder that broken things can be mended with time and effort. Evelyn sat on the porch, staring into the distance. It had been days since Mirabelle's visit, and her words still echoed in Evelyn's mind. I came to show you that no amount of rejection or hardship could break me. Lionel joined her, his usually stern face softened by regret. She's not the same girl we sent away. Evelyn's voice cracked as she spoke. Lionel, we abandoned her when she needed us the most. We judged her, shamed her. And yet, she forgave us. Lionel nodded solemnly. We have to make this right, Evelyn. We need to tell her how sorry we are, not for her forgiveness, but because she deserves to hear it. Lionel and Evelyn set out to find Mirabelle. They asked neighbors, old friends, and anyone who might know where she was living. Most directed them to the bakery Mirabelle had built in honor of Martha. When they arrived at Martha's oven, the bustling atmosphere caught them off guard. The bakery was warm and inviting, filled with customers savoring pastries and coffee. Behind the counter, Mirabelle worked with effortless grace, her face calm and radiant. She's built all this? Evelyn whispered, her voice tinged with awe and shame. Lionel cleared his throat, suddenly nervous. Let's speak to her. As the crowd thinned, Lionel and Evelyn approached the counter. Mirabelle looked up, her expression unreadable. Mom? Dad? What are you doing here? She asked, her tone polite but distant. Evelyn clasped her hands nervously. We came to see you. To talk. Mirabelle nodded. I'm listening. Lionel stepped forward. Mirabelle, we've been wrong about everything. We let our pride, our shame, and our fear dictate how we treated you. We're sorry for abandoning you when you needed us most. Evelyn's voice trembled. Seeing you now, knowing what you've accomplished. It's clear we were blind. You've built a beautiful life for yourself, Mirabelle. We're so proud of you. Mirabelle folded her arms, her gaze steady. Proud now? After all these years? Do you have any idea what I went through? Evelyn wiped her tears, her guilt written all over her face. We don't. And that's on us. We don't expect forgiveness, Mirabelle, but we want you to know how deeply sorry we are. Mirabelle softened slightly and gestured for them to sit. I'll tell you this much. Everything I am today, I owe to Martha. She found me when I had no one. She fed me, taught me, gave me hope when the world had turned its back on me, including you. She paused, her voice steady. She's my mother now. She treated me like a daughter when my own parents didn't. Lionel lowered his head. We don't deserve to be called your parents. But please know that we regret every moment we failed you. At that moment, Martha entered the bakery, her face lighting up at the sight of Mirabelle. Busy day, darling? She asked, her voice warm and familiar. Mirabelle smiled. Always, Mama. Martha noticed Lionel and Evelyn and raised an eyebrow. These must be your parents. Yes, Mirabelle said, her tone neutral. They're here to apologize. Martha's expression softened. Well, it's about time. She turned to Lionel and Evelyn. I don't know what you said to her all those years ago, but I saw the broken girl you left behind. And I saw her rebuild herself. She's strong because she had to be. Lionel and Evelyn exchanged ashamed glances. We know, Lionel said. And we're grateful she had you. Mirabelle stood, her arms crossed. I've spent years thinking I needed your love, your approval. But I've realized something. I don't. I've built a life I'm proud of, and I did it without you." Evelyn's tears flowed freely. "Mirabelle, we don't deserve your forgiveness. But we're asking for it anyway. Please let us be part of your life again." Mirabelle sighed deeply, her heart heavy. "I've already forgiven you. Carrying anger only hurts me, and I won't let that hold me back. But understand this, forgiveness doesn't mean things go back to the way they were. Martha is the mother I needed, and she always will be. That doesn't mean I'll erase you from my life, but the bond we had, it's different now." Evelyn nodded, her face crumpling with relief. "We understand, and we're thankful for any chance to know you again." Laiano reached for Mirabelle's hand. "We've lost so much time, but we'd like to start over if you'll let us." Martha placed a hand on Mirabelle's shoulder. "Sometimes forgiveness isn't about the person asking, it's about freeing yourself. You've grown into an incredible woman, Mirabelle. Your heart is big enough for that." Mirabelle nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. She turned to her parents. "I'll let you into my life, but you have to earn a place in Daniel's. He deserves grandparents who'll love him unconditionally, not judge him for his origins." Laiano and Evelyn nodded fervently. "We'll do whatever it takes," Evelyn promised. As the weeks passed, Laiano and Evelyn began visiting the bakery regularly. They got to know Daniel, who was warm and polite but cautious. Mirabelle watched from a distance, her heart conflicted but hopeful. She saw her parents trying, truly trying, to rebuild the bridges they had burned. One evening, as they sat together over coffee, Laiano turned to Mirabelle. "You've built something beautiful here, Mirabelle. We're honored to witness it." Mirabelle smiled faintly. "It wasn't easy. But it taught me that even broken things can be mended, if both sides are willing." Martha, sitting nearby, raised her cup. "To healing, then?" Mirabelle clinked her cup with hers. "To healing." And for the first time in years, Mirabelle felt the warmth of a family, new and old, beginning to grow. Mirabelle's journey didn't end with her return. She expanded Martha's bakery into a chain, using her success to mentor struggling young women. As she stood in her bustling shop one evening, Daniel by her side, she reflected on the life she had built. Her pain had become her strength, and her story was a beacon of hope for those who felt lost. "No matter how dark the night," she told Daniel, "there's always a dawn waiting to break." Mirabelle's resilience turned her tragedy into triumph, proving that even in the face of wickedness, redemption is possible.